How y'all doing? This is your boy. Well, that is great. This one segment is not going to be about a cryptid. It's going to be about something, however, that I've mentioned in many of my previous videos, but not done directly on when it comes to a video on this subject. The subject is the Tulpa, Tulpa. The Tulpa is literally a mental manifestation and a spiritual manifestation, quite literally created into existence. It's a little more complex than that, but that's the best way I know to say it. Many practitioners of Buddhism, especially when it comes to the Tibetan branch of Buddhism, many times they would try to invoke something like this, and maybe for them to be guided further into enlightenment. And I'm going to be honest with you, that in itself, well, that's their path. But that in itself, while it's something I definitely would not practice, it is fascinating because it reminds me once more how powerful the human mind really is, especially when it comes to the faith that strengthens the human mind, whatever path you take. Now, here's something very interesting. The tulpa has been a very strong phenomenon, I would say, in the last 10 years, because you have to understand, a lot of young men now and women, they're plagued with a very nasty situation of anxiety and loneliness. Now, that's something that's plagued me before, especially anxiety. And many times, especially when the MLP, which would be the My Little Pony craze, was out when that series come, when the remake of that series come out. Well, I think it's silly as hell, but at the same time, you have to understand, generational gap here. Many times these these kids would get into the practice of creating a tulpa of maybe an imaginary friend or something along those lines. Now you have to understand the book, it says you pretty much put away childish things, you take the mantle of manhood things, and your interests, your desires, and all this. And there's a reason it says that. I think this is definitely one of those reasons. As in something like this should definitely not be played with or toyed with at all. However, other people have different faiths. That's just how it is. The idea of creating a being based on the energy of the mind and the spirit is not new. I'm going to be honest with you. There's actually a practice called tulpamancy, which is something in itself. Look this up on Wikipedia. I'm just saying, it's fairly straightforward if you get my drift. Now, I'm going to go ahead and definitely once more go back into what I've said before many times. The mind generates a lot of powerful things. There have been sightings, of course, as I said before, of the Slender Man, things like this in my video I did before, about this kind of phenomena. You have to understand, kids, they're digesting this content which comes out, and of course, kids are curious, which is understandable. However, the result of that and that mental psychic energy from the mind and the spirit is quite literally being tapped into, and naturally the human mind, as powerful as it is, which the Lord has given us, it literally projects into a solid form. I think a lot of these sightings of the dog man, maybe even Bigfoot, I think a lot of these kind of things, don't get me wrong, I do believe these creatures exist. I wouldn't be doing what I do if I didn't believe that. But there's a big but here. People have to understand that many times people are so desperate to see something or to believe in something, they quite literally put it into a physical form. They manifest it. That's something in itself which is not new, but many people don't think about this. So I'm just saying, I think a lot of these so-called quote-unquote cryptid sightings could actually be something that might be something similar to a tulpa, or something in which they quite literally thought and almost spoke into existence. That is the power of the human mind, my friend, as well as the power of the human spirit. People do not understand just how powerful each one of us, as human beings being human, people don't understand what they're capable of. And of course, naturally, it's very interesting. Supposedly, tulpas ain't supposed to have a very long lifespan unless there's energy put into them. And then itself, of course, they're focused on belief. You have to believe in something for it to exist. That's the power of faith in itself. That's, of course, that can be with any faith you have, any religion, whether it be Christianity or, Islam. Those two, I think, are really based strongly on faith, if you know what I'm talking about. Any type of Judeo-Christian belief is usually centered upon faith and belief. However, there are other faiths or beliefs and cultures that have the same type of thing. That's what I'm trying to get across. And sometimes people are taught to, especially like I said, when it comes to Taoist beliefs, Buddhist, Hindu, people are taught to tap into things that maybe they shouldn't, if you get my drift. I'm not criticizing anyone of another religion. I'm just seeing it from my own experiences, the things I've seen, if you get my drift. My point is this. It's a little bit beyond simply a person hallucinating or simply, trying to have an imaginary friend. They're tapping into something, literally reaching into a dimension in the human consciousness that is something we don't understand. I'm pretty sure maybe the guys who are doing this might think they understand what they're doing, but I think, of course, me personally, it's something I wouldn't do. Again, also, you have to understand, when it comes to the desperation of belief and willing it into a real form, into a manifestation, that in itself is another thing. You have to understand certain things can have both positive and negative connotations. But when it comes to the spirit of desperation, it is a repelling force. And naturally, when you're focusing that into a real form, you are dealing with, well, of course, there's negativity involved with it. So natural, there's negativity in what you've manifested. Of course, there's all kinds of beliefs when it comes to that. I believe very firmly in putting your intent out. That's another version of manifesting something into reality. The Tulpa is simply an entity that is quite literally a refined version of that. And people many times, I think, put these things out without even being aware of it. But think about it, like with aliens, reptilians, all kinds of stuff like that. People are so desperate to believe in this stuff. And also, here's something else to think about. Let's say you have a person who is very religious. And, of course, maybe they have a psychotic break with mental illness. They're not, of course, their mind is cooking up all kinds of stuff due to the chemical imbalances in the brain, as well as the spiritual aspects being affected by the mental disease. And maybe those hallucinations ain't really hallucinations. I know I sound kind of crazy when I say that, but I'm just saying. Me personally, I think, of course, 9 times out of 10, it just is a hallucination brought on by the mental disease. But maybe in some cases, there's something beyond that. It's just something that is fascinating to me. I'm kind of going all over the place because there's no real way for me to just leave it in one subject on this or one direction, because it is such a broad spectrum when it comes to things like the Tulpa. But at the same time, to me, it was simply fascinating to think about, and I've been wanting to do a video on this for a while. And I think personally that it would be good for folks to be made aware of this kind of stuff, and maybe it'll help them have more understanding when it comes to the power of the mind, and quite literally why it's best to keep things with the Lord and definitely seek his guidance. Because believe me, things can get out of control real quick. That's simply how it is. And of course, there's always the old, belief. Maybe it's, of course, demonic hosts and stuff naturally latch onto human thoughts. They could read the spirits, and maybe they're the ones providing the illusion of maybe some imaginary friend that the individual's created. Who the hell knows? But I'm just saying, people really don't take into account just how powerful the human soul really is when it comes to manifesting. That's really all I'm going to do on this, but I figured it would be a subject that would definitely fascinate many people. I think such things need to be made into regular knowledge for people. That way, maybe they can understand a little bit more of the paranormal that goes on around them. Of course, I'm just a guy that has theories. That's it. But either way, you guys know what I do. I'm the producer for Dark Waters Entertainment. If you've had a cryptid sighting or a paranormal sighting, and you want to have your chance to share your story and your encounter, hit me up at westvic@IamDarkWaters.com. You guys be blessed and you be safe.